This can't be true. This is only Drake's 5th studio album? Seriously? It feels like 10 at this point. What's up everyone, John from ARTV. It's time for a review of Yes, album number 5 by Canadian rapper, hip-hop artist, and singer Drake. This new record is titled Scorpion, and he's been teasing it this year on Instagram, other social media sites, and I knew it was coming. I wasn't quite ready for it, I wouldn't say. I knew that after he put out that Scary Hours EP, which was really just 2 songs, God's Plan and Diplomatic Immunity, that something else was probably brewing. And of course, because God's Plan was huge and used everywhere, I will say it's a pretty good song, but it was played to death already, and the music video, while great, I feel like I've just heard everyone talking about it still to this day. It dominated, so obviously it landed on the record. Those streams were huge, so he's going to want to count that towards first week sales, just like Hotline Bling did for Views. Now, Views came out in 2016, and that was already a stacked album. It was one of his longest projects to date, and it clocked in at 20 songs, and I was already finding myself feeling very tired by it. And while I initially, I believe, gave that a 3.5 out of 5, I honestly felt colder and colder to it over time, because it just is overly long. There's lots of filler in there, and I think that the more I listen to Drake, it's more like eating the same thing every night. I mean, just imagine every night coming home and making the exact same pasta. That's okay for some people, but for others, you want a little bit more variety. And while it's still technically probably tasting good, the pasta or else the Drake music that he's releasing, it's often just more of the same blend, and I feel like Drake is the type of guy that you know where his heart's at. He does play the role of the good guy like he talks about on this very record, but he also tries to kind of puff himself up a little bit, bang on his chest, and it's obviously hip-hop. There's a lot of that where I feel like it's kind of coming with the territory, but once he stepped into the Pusha T beef, it just, it didn't do him really any favors at all. In fact, it made him really look weak, brittle, and just like anybody could pick him up and just throw him like a football. And that's exactly kind of what happened throughout that beef. And even though Drake's duppy freestyle, I suppose, was competent enough on a musical level, lyrically, it was a little bit weak sauce, and here we have everything really just coming out and the floodgates have been open. The fact that he has a son Adonis has been exposed to the world. I mean, TMZ initially reported on that, and then Pusha T just really put it out there like, hey, you know he's harboring this child with like a porn star or an adult film actress, right? And yeah, now here we are at Scorpion, and of course, yes, Drake has acknowledged it finally. He talks about it on March 14th, the closing track to the 2nd disc of this, yes, 2-disc album, but he also talks about it a little bit more in depth on Emotionless, and that one uses a very big sample of a Mariah Carey song, and that sounds good. It does kind of have a soulful affectation to it, but the longer that the song runs, the less interest that I feel in Drake's life, his storytelling, and everything like that. It's just stale at this point. It's like the pasta got left out overnight. Scorpion is not an album that I feel the need to tear into. In fact, it's pretty competent all throughout. I mean, Drake's rhymes, his flows, his beats from his producers like 40, who is his longtime friend, partial owner of OVO Sound, his record label. It's competent through and through, but is competent always enough? Drake just sounds like he's talking about the exact same things as he's going on. The themes that are prevalent, once again, are relationships, confusion, fighting, talking about what he stands for, how he sees himself, how other people see him. And more often than not, he's a little bit too in his feelings, I suppose, for me, and trying to make these almost fake deep statements that make it sound like he's being very prolific, but it's really not all that prolific whatsoever. And the way that he talks about his son and the fact that he wasn't hiding his son from the world, he was hiding the world from his son. He says that on Emotionless, and I almost laughed out loud because that just sounds like the answer that someone would give and the response that they would say if they were finally called out on actually having a child. And you have to give a reason as to why you kept this under wraps. And oh, Drake makes this deep statement, and he leads up to that by saying stuff like, "A wise man once said nothing at all," which I feel like his fans will probably eat right out of his hands, but it's really not that deep, bros. We're gonna split this review up into two parts because there are two discs, so obviously I'm going to review disc 1 and then I'm going to review disc 2. After each disc and my analysis and thoughts and review there, I will give a rating for that specific disc, but make sure you stick around to the end of the video where I weigh both together and give a cumulative score. Honest question for the audience out there watching this video, a show of hands please, if I could get a head count. Who out there was asking for an hour and a half and 25 songs from Drake? Well, I'd actually probably be surprised at the amount of hands that just shoot straight to the ceiling. And I'm not really sure that mentality agrees with me personally, because I would rather chop this album into one cohesive piece that has both the bangers, the more flamers of songs, and the more upbeat hip-hop tracks, and also the more down-tempo and emotional tunes. This could have been made into a 16-song project, but it just feels like it's been stretched out to be a 2-disc album and something that packages and markets itself as something maybe a little bit more than it actually is. But starting with disc 1, we open up on a track that I actually do like. It has this kind of glossy production that makes use of synthesizers. I think that 40 and No ID's production on this was really, really strong. It's one of the best tracks on both of the discs overall, and especially on disc 1. It's a great start, and sure, it might sound like plenty of other Drake songs in a way, but I think that his flow and just the musical flow of the track is actually pretty damn good. It's a better Drake than we get a lot of the time, even on this album, but in the past few years, I feel like Drake's kind of been struggling with just having the same sounding production and the same kind of tension in his songs. But this one breaks it a little bit for me, and even the track that comes right after that, Nonstop, it's been one of the most popular tracks, one of the most streamed ones, everyone is buzzing about it, and I find it to be serviceable Drake, but that's not always a bad thing. In fact, I've liked plenty of Drake songs in the past, so if it's Drake doing Drake and maybe stepping out a little bit, then I'm okay with that. Disc 1 isn't always so kind to us though, as we do have to sit through some of these other tracks like the almost embarrassing I'm Upset. It's definitely a flop of a tune that has a weird flow, and just his lyrical content feels cringy on that one to me. The beat definitely rides in a way that's reminiscent of other trap stylings, but also blending a little bit more with Drake's older styles and production techniques that have been used for him. His flow definitely sounds uneven and also very, very predictable on this track, so I'm Upset, outside of that amazing music video, is definitely something that I'd like to toss in the garbage bin. Can't Take a Joke is an interesting track because it seems to talk about the way that other people can't handle jokes, and he's just trying to laugh with the bros, as he said, but they can't take a joke. But then he says, because there's not one. So is he implying that the things that people clown on him for are actually not things that they should be laughing about? Or what is his statement or point here? Either way, I definitely feel like it was a misfire, and one of the weaker tracks on disc 1 and disc 2. 8 out of 10 uses buzzwords and also things that have been trendy with his names in articles to try and get people stirred up. I think the beef is definitely referenced there as well between him and Pusha T. And then we've got a track like Elevate that once again just tries to mimic, I think, the start of the LP, the first 2 tracks, Survival, Nonstop. We get another one that's just thrown in the mix, and this is what I'm talking about. Like, we gotta chop off the body parts that just aren't working, and this is one of them. However, I do really like the Jay-Z feature. It's crazy, he must have just recorded his part within the past week or two, because he references the murder of XXXTentacion, something that a lot of people have been buzzing about, and it's interesting to see how all these rappers are really just finishing their albums at the last second just so they can get something in there, or something a little bit more relevant. Anyways, I really do like Talk Up featuring Jay-Z, good track there, but I'm surprised at how much I'm loving Mob Ties. That has Future in the background, and I do believe he's on a couple of tracks uncredited here, as are other artists such as Party Next Door, other people doing and lending their voices, doing a lot of stuff for the LP, but there aren't a ton of like official features here. Obviously Jay-Z was one of those, but Mob Ties is a track that's extremely catchy, and I love the rattling flow and the hi-hats and the way the guitar sample is used all throughout. It sounds fantastic, one of Drake's best songs in a long time if you ask me. He wraps up disc 1 by talking about all of his thoughts and feelings on there being more to life and if he's missing out on something even though he has all of this stuff. And it's that typical moody, reflective Drake beat that you know exactly what I'm talking about. His flow is just run-of-the-mill standard Drake running on a treadmill that he could do it in his sleep, and I don't find it to be very compelling. In fact, it's kind of cheesy. So it ends on a little bit of a sour note, and we do hit a peak on the next disc, and we're about to get to that. But overall, for side 1, I'm gonna have to go with a 3 out of 5. If it was the olden golden days, we'd have to take the tape out at this point and flip it over to the other side, because it's time to review disc 2. This is the more R&B and pop influence side of the project. There's 13 songs here instead of 12, so it is slightly longer in the amount of tracks, and it's an interesting collection. Honestly, I do think that it's the stronger ever so slightly of the 2 discs. Now, with this being a double album, I do think that it's wise to sometimes split it up. I didn't initially know that, and going in I was like, oh my god, it's 25 songs. But it actually does have a pretty good stopping point after you finish disc 1, so then you can come back later and start streaming, playing, whatever the hell you're doing. Listen to disc 2 separately, because I do think that it helps. You can suffer from listener fatigue if you just try to take in all 25 songs. Drake definitely tries to hang with his contemporaries on some of these tracks in terms of influence, production style, trap leanings, Finesse, for example. He calls to mind his own style and how this other guy isn't going to do it right, and it just feels like I've heard that so much from Drake at this point. I'm more paying attention to the flow, not even what he's saying lyrically, and also the music, the production, because Drake, I just don't know how much he has left to say. It's like trying to siphon a car that's been out and abandoned for like 10 years, and you know that maybe there's a few drops left in there, but you're probably not getting any gasoline and you're not going anywhere. I know that sounds harsh, and I don't think that that always is the truth. I don't think that it always applies. It's just like sometimes I just feel like Drake is so caught up on being Drake and not pushing himself that tracks like Finesse are the result of that. But then we get much more interesting content in the form of Nice for What, which is a dance anthem, something that's reminiscent of New Orleans styled music, and it's a ton of fun. I did not expect to have this much of a good time while listening to Drake music, and for whatever reason, I had only heard like a short preview of the track until I listened to this album Scorpion, and it's a good one. I can understand why it was promoted as a single, and it's been super successful for Drake. There's 2 posthumous appearances from both Michael Jackson, the king of pop himself, who passed away in 2009, and also Static Major, a rapper, singer, producer that passed away in 2008. You probably know him for singing on Lil Wayne's hit song Lollipop. Now that track already that I just referenced, Lollipop, came out after Static Major had passed away, and Drake does sample Lollipop on this record. And it's interesting to see Static Major here because that's a name that I hadn't really thought of in a long time, but I guess it's great to see kudos being given, and whether it be in sampling form, whatever he's doing. But then the Michael Jackson feature on Don't Matter to Me is a little bit odd. It was recorded in the 90s, it was previously unreleased, he had recorded some vocals for a collaboration that I think never happened, and now Drake has taken those vocals and put them alongside himself, because I think that he kind of sees them like in the same territory. Drake is maybe the king of what he's doing, and that's hip-hop, I guess pop, rap, everything like that. MJ was the king of pop. It's just a eerie comparison side by side to see them going back and forth, but honestly, I don't think the song sounds bad. And if you're just trying to make it sound bad because you don't like the fact that Michael Jackson's vocals are being used on it posthumously, please, Drake's not the one to be mad at here. It's the record labels that continue to pump out vault releases and try to squeeze more money out of the MJ fans, and for every other artist that's passed on. Blue Tint is a catchy bump in the whip styled song that has a lot of detail to it, and it does put emphasis on kind of cut loose and just feels a little bit more braggadocious, but I think in a good way. This is a good track on side 2, and we also do have other feelings from Drake, especially towards the beginning of side 2. It opens up on the track Peak, which really just feels like a down-to-earth look at Drake and his state of mind. I don't think that it's all that interesting, but still, this just feels like the type of stuff that you would drive to at twilight, or maybe it's completely dark out, whatever. It just feels like one of those songs to drive to. But right after that, I was totally caught off guard and really loved Summer Games. The production here and the stammered samples and the way that they chop up Drake's voice, it's different, it's fresh, and it actually feels new. So, of course, I'm a little bit more on board with tracks like this. Nice for what? Because they actually let Drake do something new. And that's something that I just don't feel like he's done in a while. I don't feel like Drake's out here breaking new territory and new ground very often. Side 2 is definitely a little bit more compelling, but still, it's not gonna blow anybody away, I don't think, other than Drake's hardcore fans. If you really love Drake, then you're going to love probably side 1 and side 2, but I do feel like side 2 is a bit stronger at a light 3.5 from me. Now, if you've made it all the way to the end of the video, thank you so much, first of all, for tuning in, but also it's time to give an overview of the entire Project Scorpion and rate it. I do feel like it definitely suffers from being bloated, it could have been cut down, it runs for too long. I'm repeating myself here, but Drake did the same thing on his album, so can you really blame me? It's Drake. I find it a little bit hard to talk about at this point because how much can I really say? I know I've said a lot in this video, but I also feel like I'm running in circles in a way. So let's wrap up Scorpion. Overall, this is going to get a solid 3 out of 5 from me. That was a combination of the 3 from the first disc and the light 3.5 on the second half. I think that 3 just fits this project because it's not bad. There aren't bad songs here that I just think are blatantly bad other than like I'm upset. But there's also not too many that are just amazing and are going to wow people. There's a few interesting ones that I pointed out. Definitely check out my favorites and least favorites in the description, along with a link to stream the album for yourself. But like I said, overall for Scorpion, the 5th album by Drake, it is a solid 3 out of 5. What do you guys think? Please sound off your thoughts in the comment section down below. Let me know other albums you'd like to see me review, maybe a throwback review, maybe even a top 10 Drake at some point. Let me know if you would like to see that, and please drop a like on the video while you're here. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're new here. You can see that I am now verified on YouTube. That's awesome. They actually reached out to me and put the little check mark, and that just feels like validation to me in a way. See another Drake review right over here, another recent hip hop video here, all of my socials in the description, and I'll see you soon for more on ARTV.